Good morning, buenos dias, and welcome to the Literacy Breakfast with Nancy Pearl, one of the signature fundraising events that we hold here at the Whatcom Literacy Council. I'm Paqui Paredes Mendez. I'm a professor of Spanish literature and culture at Western Washington University in the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures. I speak to you today in my role as president of the Whatcom Literacy Council Board of Directors. And again, welcome. It's wonderful to see such a packed, and it really is packed, we are sold out, thank you. Such a packed, cheerful, and lively room. It looks like you're all enjoying the breakfast treats and looking forward to the exciting event we have put together for you today. We are delighted that you're here with us supporting the Whatcom Literacy Council and the work that it does in our community. Please know that all donations from today's event will support the free adult literacy programs we offer in Whatcom County. We are now going to take a moment for a land acknowledgement that will be followed by a blessing. We are on the ancestral homelands of the Nooksack, Lami, and other Salish peoples. They have been its stewards since time immemorial, respecting the land, river, and ocean, with the understanding that everything is connected, related, and alive. We acknowledge the elders and their collective and individual plights and achievements. We consider the legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together today. And we pursue ongoing action to build lasting relationships and grow together so that all may prosper. And now we are honored to have Lami Elder Juanita Jefferson with us today, joining us this morning with a blessing. Juanita?
Nautsiam Nestalachasiam Haishka. Welcome, good people, best of people, friends and relatives. We can't thank you enough for being here. I want to welcome you to the land of my ancestors, as was acknowledged earlier, and especially to this land here. This is sacred land. My great-grandmother and her husband once had an allotment here in this park. My ancestry is not just from Lami, Simiama, and many other peoples. My mother was Dutch and Irish, and she grew up in this county. Her ancestry was the Denny pioneer family from Seattle. And so I have this tremendous history, and I consider all my ancestors very precious, just as yours are. And so with that, we always want to remember how wonderful it is to have these thousands and thousands of great-grandparents who look after us, who surround us. And so that's why this is a special place. And we just want you to share with us this special praise for our Creator. We choose the word creator as we feel this word may be more universal to many, many peoples everywhere. We ask the Creator to bless all of you, bless this gathering, bless this place this morning as you do this special work. We're grateful for all of the gifts that we receive from the Creator. We're thankful for the food that we shared this morning together. Our people look at the food we share in this way as a spiritual gift that brings us together, strengthens us as people, that we can share with one another in a better way. So with all of these beautiful gifts that you've received this morning, the people that have done the work to bring this together, we're grateful for them and all their work. We pray that all of your people are safe, that anyone who's suffering or alone, that they receive their needs, that their needs be answered. Creator, we can't thank you enough for the days ahead, for the children ahead, and especially because you're honoring that gift today of reading, and reading is so precious and special. and for those who write. And I understand now that writers have to do a lot of reading, so I'm very impressed with how much you all do to bring this wonderful gift, not only to yourselves, but to all the children. And I remember as a child, one of my most deepest wishes was to be able to read. And when I got to go to public school and begin that task, I was so proud and so happy, and have been ever since. So for that, I just really ask a blessing on all of you who support this wonderful gift of literacy, and all you who continue to meet here every year, as my friend Renee told me. And I just am so impressed and so happy for you. We ask Creator again, blessings on all of you. Hashka, and welcome to our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. Thank you for helping us and guiding us in appreciation, in shared love, and respect. We like to kick off our literacy breakfast in a memorable way, and this year is no exception. We have with us this morning poet Rena Priest, who will get us started with a reading of one of her poems. Rena is an enrolled member of the Laktemish Nation, the Lami Nation. She's a prolific writer who's regularly recognized for her work. The accolades and awards she has received are too many to list in full, but here's a little taste. From 2021 to 2023, she served as the 6th Washington State Poet Laureate. In 2022, Rena was named the 2022 Maxine Cushing Gray Distinguished Writing Fellow. She's also a recipient of an Allied Arts Foundation Professional Poet Award and fellowships from the Academy of American Poets, Indigenous Nations Poets, Nia Tiro, and the Vadom Foundation. Her debut collection, Patriarchy Blues, received an American Book Award. Her second collection, Sublime Subliminal, was published as the finalist for the Floating Bridge Press Chapbook Award. And recently, her collection of edited poems, I Sing the Salmon Home, Poems from Washington State, won the 2024 Washington State Book Award for Poetry. I will not go on, but rather invite Rena to the stage. Rena, it is such a pleasure and an honor to have you here with us.
Ait squachil nostalgia, o helixen quana satlatia kaya sachweltanat sanasnat chochlamisen. Wow, it's so wonderful to see so many people here celebrating literacy. This is great. Good to see you all. So I want to start by asking you all to think back. What are some of the very first stories you can remember? One of my very earliest memories, and possibly the reason that I am who I am today, is that I remember a story. It starts out, 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish, black fish, blue fish, old fish, new fish. This one has a little car. This one has a little star. Say, what a lot of fish there are. I remember knowing that if I brought that yellow book to my mom, she would sit beside me on the couch and do this amazing thing with her voice, which later I learned is rhyming. Back then, I pretty much thought it was a superpower. When I first became Washington State Poet Laureate, people started asking me, what is the word for poem in your language? So I went to my Aksalas and they told me, well, it could be a shwiam, which is a story, or it could be a stilam, which is a song, or it could be a tiwich, which is a prayer. And I felt that rang true. That's what our songs and stories and prayers are. They are poems. Poetry, for a very long time, was only a spoken tradition. It lived on the breath, and the rhymes in a poem were a mnemonic device to help the storyteller remember. The English word poem comes from the Greek word poiesis, which means to make. We are making the world by naming it. Similarly, author comes from Latin augur, which means to increase, originate, or promote. So poetry and authorship are truly powerful. Stories are powerful. And today, of course, they don't have to live exclusively in our memory. They live in books, which live in libraries. Some time back, I did a quick Google search and learned that there are nearly 2,500 libraries in Washington state. Way to go, Washington. That's amazing. And it's especially amazing when you compare it to the number of Starbucks locations in Washington. So think of that ubiquitous logo. It seems to be everywhere, right? But guess how many locations there are in Washington? There are only 745. That means that there are more than 3 times as many libraries in Washington as there are Starbucks. We are so lucky to live in a state that values information enough to support the activities of 2,500 libraries. In my time as State Poet Laureate, I visited many libraries. I browsed the shelves from Washington State to Washington, D.C., and a few places in between. I have been treated to the full tour of the cozy one-room library on Waldron Island and stood in awe, gaping over the grand reading room at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. I saw the famous Orozco mural in the library at Dartmouth College and visited Allen Library at the University of Washington, where I received the 2022 Maxine Cushing Gray Distinguished Writer Fellowship. Thinking back on each of these very special places, I can say that they all have one thing in common. They each house treasure troves of humanity which are cherished by their keepers and enjoyed by the people who benefit from their local collections. Libraries have played a very special role in my development as a writer, including my days as an early reader at Central Elementary School, just right over there. There was a special librarian there named Arnold Humisty, who read to us at the beginning of every library session and helped solidify my love of reading. So in celebration of literacy, and Nancy Pearl, whose book Library Girl is going to be an important book for a lot of young people, I think, I'd like to share my poem, A Library is a Universe. My grade school librarian read to us aloud. He did all the voices, acted the stories out, then turned us loose among the shelves to search for something to read for ourselves. This is how I learned to see the wondrous worlds inside those pages, the wondrous worlds inside of me. What a gift to have a look at the treasures of a mind through the pages of a book. Haishka.
Haishka, Rena. What a wonderful way to start us off. If you are like me, I'm going off script for a second. What I love about Juanita's word and Rena's words is that it helps us, it's like they throw out this thread into all of you that starts connecting us all. The power of reading, the power of connection, the power of community, the power of the land we sit on. Enjoy that. We'll see more of that as the stories that are shared today become a part of all of us. So, a wonderful way to get us started. And please note that Village Books has copies of Rena's most recent poetry collection here. Don't run now, wait until the end of the event. But you can certainly get them there. I can't think of a better way to start our event, enjoying amazing poetry that anchors our minds and hearts. Thank you all again for making the time to join us today. Let me share a special thank you to our Pulitzer sponsors, BP Cherry Point Refinery and Puget Sound Energy. And I know there are tables here. A wave, thank you, representing both. They are helping us in such a big way this morning. And to the many smaller businesses that came in with Newberry sponsorships, thank you. It is wonderful to see so many of our partner agencies here this morning. So our friends from Whatcom Community College are here in force. Can I get a wave? Thank you. Also the folks at the Bellingham Technical College Foundation. Can I get a wave? All right. People are shy. It's like, oh, you can do this. The librarians from the Bellingham Public Library and from the Whatcom Community Library System. Where are you? Thank you. All right. Now you're catching on. That's very good. And of course, our good friends from Evergreen Goodwill. Where are you? Thank you. All right. We truly appreciate everyone being here this morning to support our literacy programs. I'd also like to thank Village Books, right over there, for being here bright and early. It is so great to have them make available the books that Nancy Pearl will be presenting to us. Our deepest gratitude to you all. A quick update on what we have been up to here at the Whatcom Literacy Council. We are seeing a huge surge in demand for English language services, and we're working hard to be able to meet that demand. We are happy to report that we have placed a record number of trained volunteers in ESL classrooms at BTC and WCC this last few quarters. We have partnered with school districts, libraries, and businesses as we offer small group classes throughout the county. It has been an exciting year, and we look forward to continuing our important role in creating social capital and helping our neighbors find a voice for themselves and their communities. Each year, we take a moment to hear from people who have actually participated in one of our programs, and this year is no exception. Our first success story features Yong and Dongpo Song. Their tutor, Lori Brock, is with us this morning. So, you want to come to the stage?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dongpo. It's my pleasure to take part in this activity. About 1 year ago, our family moved to Bellingham from China. Now, my daughter is a sophomore at Seahome High School. My son is in 7th grade at Fairhaven Middle School. Generally, people like my age would give up learning a second language. But my family decided to settle in Bellingham because my children like their school and they have many good friends there. So we have tried our best to learn English and help my children adapt to the new environment. But as you know, I and my husband are a little older to learn new things. Yes. When we were struggling to learn English, my brother-in-law strongly suggested that we go to Whatcom Literacy for help. So we met our English tutor, Lori Brock, who is very friendly and knowledgeable. We discussed various topics about life, work, culture, etc. Her positive attitude towards life deeply inspired us. We got her help in many ways. Now, although our English still has room for improvement, everyone around us has witnessed our progress in listening and speaking. We are very grateful to Lori for everything she has done, and we are very grateful to Whatcom Literacy for providing us with such good opportunity to practice English. So, thank you very much.
That is amazing. Thank you, Don Paul. What a wonderful story. And I want you to think a little bit about just how scary it is when English is not your first language, to stand up here in front of a microphone and speak to, I don't know, 200 people? That was amazing. Your English is very, very good. And I imagine you worked really, really hard. So we have another speaker this morning, one of our volunteer tutors, Aziz Karim. We love featuring our volunteer tutors because the Whatcom Literacy Council is a volunteer-based organization. Since 1983, we have relied on trained volunteers to help us offer free programs to adults in our community. Each year, we work with over 75 volunteers. We would not be able to function and have the impact that we have in our community without the work, care, and dedication of our tutors. Aziz?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm going to go off script a little bit here. When I was asked to speak, I thought I was going to speak in front of about 20 or 30 people. So bear with me. I'm a volunteer for the Whatcom Literacy Council, where I tutor. When I retired from a 30-year career in the environmental engineering field, I knew I wasn't ready to just sit idle. I spent my career working with water and wastewater systems for some of the largest cities and municipalities in the U.S., helping ensure that those communities had access to safe and reliable water. And after years of contributing to ensure the success of those communities, I wanted to continue making a difference, but this time in a more personal way. And so that's how I found myself volunteering for the Whatcom Literacy Council. I've been a tutor now for almost 4 years, and currently I work with Jillian. Jillian is a mechanical engineer, so I think that's why we got paired, because I was an engineer. And Jillian is from China, has lived in the US for almost 20 years now. But like most professionals, Jillian is an exceptionally smart and skillful engineer, but like most professionals who work in a second language, he faces challenges with communication at work. I meet with Jillian once a week, and over the last year, I watched him grow in confidence from struggling with writing and communicating to now tackling reports with so much more ease. And this is the reason why I volunteer, because small successes like these remind me that even the simplest efforts can have a huge impact. It's not just it's just not about helping someone learn the English language. It's building a connection, being part of their journey, and celebrating their successes. Volunteering is my way of giving back to a community that has done so much for me. I believe in the power of simple acts of service, the quiet, consistent efforts that create a ripple of change in people's lives. I've always been inspired by the everyday people who go out of their way to help others. And that's the spirit I hope to embody. Volunteering, as I stand here today, I encourage all of you to consider how you have contributed in making a difference in someone's life. No matter how small the action may seem, it can have a lasting impact. Together, we can create a better, more connected world, one small step at a time. Thank you again for being here and for doing your part to help others through literacy. Thank you again.
Thank you, Aziz. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your words. I feel proud to be part of this community. So thank you for helping us remember what makes us special. And now it is the time to hear from our guest speaker, Nancy Pearl. Nancy Pearl is a librarian, a best-selling author, and the former executive director of the Washington Center for the Book at Seattle Public Library. Her prolific reading and her knowledge of books and literature have made her famous, and that's not an exaggeration. In addition to the 4 books in the Book List series, she's the author of the novel George and Lizzie and The Writer's Library, a collection of interviews with authors about the books they love, co-written with Jeff Schrager. She regularly appears and speaks on public radio, recommending books and interviewing authors. She's the author of a novel and a memoir and has been given so many awards, I cannot possibly list them all. But suffice to say, she was named the 2011 Librarian of the Year by the Library Journal and given the 2021 Literarian Award for Outstanding Service to the American literary community, a Lifetime Achievement Award. Nancy, the stage is yours. Do you want to stand there or do you want to stay on that?
Oh, no, stand.
Okay.
Thank you. It is so great to be here again. I had to miss last year because of an unexpected illness, and Catherine put out notes that people could send me and put them in a big pile, and it was just this big pile, and it came, and I just, it was so wonderful to hear from you. So thank you those of you who had a chance to do it, thank you so much for doing that. It meant just so much to me. But it's so nice to be here this year and to see all of old friends and new friends. And, you know, if I had my wish, I would just have each of you, like a fortune teller, I'd have each of you come up to me and tell me what you're reading. I would love to know that. So I want to start my book talk by sharing a poem with you. Obviously, this is a poetry morning. It's called Forgetfulness by Billy Collins, and I read it last year when I did the book talks over Zoom, or I taped them, I didn't do them over Zoom. But I know, based on this poem, that many of you have forgotten the poem. So I'm going to read it again. This is a poem that gives me a lot of comfort as I age and find that sometimes words don't appear in my mind and on my tongue when I expect them to or would like them to. So this is Billy Collins' poem, Forgetfulness. The name of the author is the first to go, followed obediently by the title, the plot, the heartbreaking conclusion, the entire novel, which suddenly becomes one you have never read, never even heard of. As if, one by one, the memories you used to harbor decided to retire to the southern hemisphere of the brain, to a little fishing village where there are no phones. Long ago, you kissed the names of the 9 muses goodbye and watched the quadratic equation pack its bags. And even now, as you memorize the order of the planets, something else is slipping away. A state flower, perhaps, the address of an uncle, the capital of Paraguay. Whatever it is you are struggling to remember, it is not poised on the tip of your tongue or even lurking in some obscure corner of your spleen. It has floated away down a dark mythological river whose name begins with an L, as far as you can recall, well on your own way to oblivion, where you will join those who have even forgotten how to swim and how to ride a bicycle. No wonder you rise in the middle of the night to look up the date of a famous battle in a book on war. No wonder the moon in the window seems to have drifted out of a love poem that you used to know by heart. Isn't that a wonderful poem? It's in one of his collections, so take a look at his poems. I love them. They're very, very, very accessible, but this one spoke to me, I have to say. So this is the list of the books I'm going to talk about. It's in alphabetical order by title. I'm a librarian, so I'm going to talk to you in alphabetical order by the author. But it's all on one page. I just figured it'd be easier for me to do as my notes have than, to go paper to paper, turn it around. So forgive me. So the first book I want to talk about is a novel called Loved and Missed, Missed. Oh, no. Oh, you're going to do it that way. Gotcha. It's fine. I'll do it that way. Okay. The first book I'm going to talk about is called The Alternatives. And it's a novel. It's the third novel, I think, by this author. I had never heard of her before. I picked up the book. I have no idea why. You know how sometimes you're walking, by the books in the library or at the bookstore. Lucky you guys to have that bookstore there. And a book calls to you, and this book called to me, and I picked it up and I started reading it, and I absolutely loved it. It's the story of four Irish sisters: Olwen, who is a geologist; Rhonda, who's a political scientist; Nell, who is an adjunct professor in Connecticut; and Maeve, who's a chef. Now, they each have a PhD, which they're very proud of. Maeve always wants to tell people, and always does tell people, that hers is an honorary PhD. So she's not quite as smart as her sisters, she would say. They take turns in this book telling the story, so you hear from all four sisters. And it's the story of what happens when one of them, the oldest, the geologist, Nell, walks out of her life and disappears. And it's not clear to any of the sisters, the other sisters, whether she wants them to come after her, whether she wants them to find her. The writing is absolutely gorgeous, and each sister's story demonstrates, I think, how the past, and especially the deaths of their parents, has interjected itself into the present. The New York Times has this great line about the New York Times Review had this great line. As with any good Irish novel, there are familiar elements of alcoholism, mental illness, rural landscapes, adverse weather conditions, and tumultuous family reunions. And just, I wish one of the book clubs, a book club that you belong to would choose this book to read, maybe when it comes out in paperback, which should be, or maybe it is out in paperback. But anyway, would you just call me and I'll listen into the discussion? Because the ending of this book, all I want to say is that ending, okay? So promise me you'll do that. Catherine can put you in touch with me very easily. Okay, next book, Black Angels. Black Angels. Where's my note? Oh, The Black Angels. Oh, my goodness. If you're looking for, there are some wonderful nonfiction books on this list, if I do say so myself, since I picked the list. Okay, The Black Angels, the untold story of the nurses who helped cure tuberculosis. So this is a book, this is a nonfiction book that takes us, beginning just before the Depression, takes us through World War II. And it's the story of a hospital on Staten Island, mainly a story of a hospital on Staten Island, the Seaview Hospital, and what happened during the tuberculosis breakout, which occurred right after the Depression in those years. And of course, this was before there was any medication really for tuberculosis. And the death rate was very high, and the nurses at the Seaview Hospital refused to treat these patients because it was a highly contagious disease. And so what the hospital did was bring in a cadre of black nurses from the South who stayed with these patients and helped cure them. It's a very moving story. It's very readable. And if you like that kind of narrative nonfiction, which I love, this is one of those books that you will really, really enjoy. Next, please. Oh, so this is, next year, let's put it in alphabetical order by author. This is Elise Graham's Book and Dagger, How Scholars and Librarians Became the Unlikely Spies of World War II. You know how every nonfiction book has to have the title and then colon and then that whole subtitle. And the subtitle, what do I have to say? Nothing about it because the subtitle says it all. So, the OSS, Office of Strategic Services during World War II, is kind of morphed into the CIA. And one of the things that the CIA did was to recruit scholars and librarians from all over the country to help do the background research that was needed during the Cold War and the following years. And this is a story of some of those researchers, including some wonderful stories about librarians. So, that's why I couldn't not read this book because, it had librarians in the title, which many books do not. Oh, hey, that's what we should do. That's what I'm going to do. The next book is Danzy Senna's Colored Television, The Librarians. No, I just made that up. Danzy Senna is one of my very favorite authors, and she is married to Percival Everett. Percival Everett is the author of the best-selling novel this year called James, which is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn. If you want some really good books for your book group, those reading Huck Finn and then reading James maybe in 2 months would be a really wonderful way to, a really good choice. So Danzy Senna would describe herself as a mulatto. Her mother was white, her father was black. Her first novel, which was called Caucasia, is very, very autobiographical. It's the story of two sisters in Caucasia. They're twins. One who could pass easily as white and one who couldn't. And what happens in that novel is when the parents divorce and the sister who looks like her white mother goes with her mother, and the sister who looks more like her father stays with her father, and what happens in that book. It's a wonderful, wonderful novel. And Colored Television is her newest book. And like Percival Everett, her husband, Danzy Senna's books are satirical. They're books that are going to look at, especially Colored Television, because it's the newest book, looks at biracial identity and what that means. And because it's a novel, it's not a book that is hitting you over the head with the subject. She's showing you through the life of the biracial main character what that experience is like. So Danzy Senna, just really wonderful. And Percival Everett, did you see the movie American Fiction? So Percival Everett wrote the book that American Fiction was based on, and that book, I think I talked about it last year. It's a wonderful novel. Okay, next. Okay, another great nonfiction, and it's now in paperback. It would be if you're looking for a nonfiction book for your book group, or you have somebody in your life who loves that kind of narrative nonfiction. This is a really good one to have. The Daughters of Yalta, The Librarians, The Churchills, Roosevelts, and Harrimans, A Story of Love and War. 2 colons. In right toward the end of World War II, Kathleen Harriman, who is the daughter of Averell Harriman, who was very important in a non-elected position in the U.S. Government, Anna Roosevelt, who was, of course, Theodore Roosevelt's Franklin Roosevelt's daughter, and Sarah Churchill's daughter. Their fathers all met in Yalta, and along with Stalin, met in Yalta to decide really how to, they saw that the end of the war was coming, how the world should be divided up among them. And the three of them, the British, Churchill, and the two Americans, brought their daughters who were in their early 20s. And this is the daughters' story of what went on. And it's just a delight to read. I think that it's one of those books that gives you a picture of World War II, especially the aftermath, the dividing up, which they chose to divide up Berlin. This is when Berlin was divided into those different sectors, for example, that gives you a picture of what a different way of looking at events that we're somewhat familiar with, and a great, very, very, very good reading. Okay. Oh, Day's Work. Oh my gosh. I loved this book. I loved this book so much. I have to say this was my favorite book of 2023. And when I read it, I was disinclined to read it. I wanted to read it because I am a big fan of Chris Batchelder. And he and his wife, Jennifer Habel, wrote this book together. But Chris Batchelder's earlier book is called The Throwback Special. And that's the story of a group of middle-aged men who don't know each other well, but they come together every year to reenact a particular football play. And you don't even have to like football at all. What you have to do when you're reading Chris Batchelder's books is love characters, love three-dimensional characters and their stories. So I was so excited to see this new book by Chris Batchelder, and I picked it up, Day's Work, and I looked at it, and I thought, I sort of paged through it. Oh no. First of all, there are librarians in it, but I was just going to make a joke and say there was no librarians in it, but there are librarians. Okay, never mind. So I paged through the book, and I, sort of, how you kind of get an idea of what the book is about. So the first thing that I saw when I looked at this book is that Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick, appears in this novel fairly frequently, like on every other page. Now, Herman Melville, great American writer, was assigned in high school when I think in my junior year. I could not read it. I just could not read it. I just, it was so tomish, it was just so heavy. But I did get an A in the class anyway, so... and then I was paging through it some more. Well, who else should be a character in this book? Nathaniel Hawthorne. Well, I don't want to... the same thing happened. Let me just say I have never read the Scarlet Letter. Okay. So what is this? So then I started reading the book, and oh my gosh, as I said, it is absolutely wonderful. It's the story of a woman who, during the pandemic, okay, this is a book set during the pandemic. Now, we all lived through the pandemic, right? Or we wouldn't be here. Why would we want to go back and read a book set during the pandemic? It was not a particularly fun time for anybody. And this is a book set during the pandemic. And the minute that I actually sat down and started reading it, I fell in love with this book. And it's the story of a woman who becomes obsessed with Herman Melville, and what a life that's devoted to art in its, literature, art, that kind of art, what it does to the people who are so inclined, the pitfalls that a life devoted to art can have. And it's the story of a husband and a wife and their two children who are living through the pandemic, and this wife is just obsessed with Herman Melville, and therefore obsessed as well with Nathaniel Hawthorne and all the other writers who were around that period. What the book is written in is little chunks of little paragraphs, and there's everything. I mean, it's the kind of book that you want to write down all these little facts that if, you go to, like, I don't know, does anybody go to, like, dinner parties anymore? But, it's the kind of thing that, to bring up things. Did you know, for example, that Emily Dickinson had an enormous dog? She did. I just, how did she walk that dog when she stayed in the house all the time? That's what I wondered. Short paragraphs, wonderful, just wonderful, wonderful reading. Funny, sad, all of those things mixed in together. And she quotes from, the character quotes from different poets. And one of the things that happened in Melville's life is that his oldest son had a very difficult life. And there's a poem that she quotes in this, that they quote in this book, that the main character, the woman, quotes in this book, is from a poet named Robert Haas. And the line is, "It's brutal the way some lives seem to work and some don't," which is just a terrific line. Okay. Well, now you know how I felt when I looked at this book. I mean, it doesn't make you want to read. I mean, I hope I gave you a little sense of how wonderful the book is, but it just is fabulous. And I believe, I interviewed them, and I said, I don't believe that this book is fiction. This is really, you guys and your lives during the pandemic. And they swore that it wasn't. They said, we didn't have this conversation, we didn't have that conversation. But they're thinking of doing a sequel from the husband's point of view during the same time period. Okay, next please. Eligible, oh my gosh. I loved this book. This is an absolutely wonderful, like little dessert. It's just fabulous. It is by Curtis Sittenfeld, who's a well-known writer, writes rom-coms and other books. Eligible is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice set in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the present. And it is such fun to read. And what I know, myself included, when I finished this, I went back and reread Pride and Prejudice to see how she stuck so closely to the plot and where she kind of, did she divert it all? And she didn't. This is really Pride and Prejudice in Cincinnati. Plus, it gives you a sense that, maybe you'd like to go to Cincinnati for a little. I listened to this book. I'm a huge audiobook person, and this is just a terrific listen as well. So take a look at that. Oh my God, this is so good. I mean, I just want to go down that whole table of books and just sort of pat them all, and say, oh, so good, so good. Okay, I'm going to really hurry up now. Okay, the next book, Flatshare, a novel. This is another rom-com, another book that I listened to. I think that, we're coming into winter, and this is a time when I feel that I don't want to be weighted down by the books that I read. I just want something that is going to be entertaining and fun. This is a British novel, and it has a wonderful reader who's British, and it's about a young woman who has broken up with her not very nice boyfriend, and she is forced to find a new place to live. And she sees an ad for a flat share, as it's called in Britain, and she decides to go, look at it and see what it's like. And it turns out it is indeed a flat share. There's one problem. There's only one bed. But that's okay because the man who's renting out the apartment works at night, and she works during the day. And that's the story. It's great. It's just great. The next book is, and somebody that I saw when we walked in had read Flatshare and really thought it was entertaining. Could you just, yes, didn't you think it was great fun? Great fun. Okay, Loved and Missed by Susie Boyd. Finally, we're getting to this book. This book I wanted to start with in case you forgot. I hate this cover. Let me just say it. This cover to me says, Nancy Pearl, you will not like this book. The British cover is fabulous. I don't know why they chose this cover. Susie Boyd is British. Her grandfather, her father was the artist Lucian Freud, who had 14 children. She was one of them. She is one of them. She has a half-sister, Esther Freud, who is also a novelist. This is the first novel by Susie Boyd that's been published in the States, although there are many of her books that are published in the UK. So she is the great-granddaughter of Sigmund Freud. What I loved about this book is the writing. If what you love when you're reading is the kind of writing where you stop and you say to yourself, how could she ever have come up, thought of putting words together that way? This is a book for you. It's the story of a grandmother whose daughter, for a variety of reasons, is unable to care for, whose daughter, in the eyes of the mother, is unable to care for her new baby. The grandmother takes over the raising of that child. And the first 3/4 of the book are told from the point of view of the mother, of the grandmother, and we see the time pass in the book. The child grows up, and the last quarter of the book is told from the point of view of the little girl who is not so little anymore. It's just one of those books where the characters are so well developed, and they'll just stay with you forever. And that's the kind of book I love. So take a look at that one. The next book on the list is Swans of Harlem, 5 Black Ballerinas, 50 Years of Sisterhood, and Their Reclamation of a Groundbreaking History. This is nonfiction. As you could tell, there's a colon in the title. And it's the story, as the subtitle says, of these 5 black ballerinas who were in the dance theater of Harlem, and how nobody knows about them. These were the early dancers that Arthur Mitchell, hired, trained, worked with, and starred in the dance theater of Harlem. And it's a book that talks about why some people and some events are remembered, enshrined. We know about the Balanchine's Indian ballerinas, as he would say, but we don't know, and we didn't know until Karen Valby decided to really investigate about these women and their lives and what it means to fans of ballet, fans of dance today. So another really good nonfiction. The next book by Mathis is called The Unsettled. Some of you might have read a few years ago her best-selling novel, The 12 Tribes of Hattie. Did anybody read that? That's another really good book for a book group. And this is also a wonderful book for a book group. It's told in 3 voices, and it's the story of a mother named Duchess, a black mother, her daughter Ava, and Ava's son Toussaint. Duchess lives in the South in what was once a vibrant black town in the deep South in Alabama, now home to only 5 families, and her daughter, who lives in Philadelphia, her daughter Ava, who lives in Philadelphia, and Ava's son. And this is a book about how we not only remember the past, but how we recreate the past to make living in the present make more sense to us. I think this is one of those books that would be very good discussion. Well, actually, rom-com, you maybe leave out the Flatshare. I don't know that there's anything more to say about it, but gee, wasn't this fun? But most of the books that I talked about today would be great for book groups. The next book, another nonfiction book, David Grann, The Wager, A Tale of Shipwreck, Mutiny, and Murder. David Grann writes for The New Yorker regularly. I'm sure that you've read Killers of the Flower Moon was his previous book. His first book, whose name has disappeared down that river that I think begins with an S. His first book was, they're just such readable nonfiction. And this is the story of, this is a story of a mutiny. And the story of the mutiny comes to the attention of the British government because two groups of the ship, two groups who both served on the ship, the mutineers and the people who tried to stop the mutiny, came to the government or were brought before the government to tell the story of what happened. And those two stories are diametrically opposed. And who is believed is really important because mutiny is punished by death. And when you read about what happened during the mutiny, it's kind of reading Lord of the Flies. It's kind of seeing how civilization can fall away and what happens when it does. So that's The Mutiny. So good. The last book I'm going to talk about, 2 more books. The Wedding People. All right, I'm just going to say it again. Oh my gosh, this is such a terrific novel. And I listened to this book as well. It's so good. So the main character I love this book. The main character, all right, let me just back up and say, I know I have said that I loved all these books. And for those of you who maybe have never, have never heard me say this before, and those of you who have heard me probably don't remember, so I'm going to say it again. I know because I said I love all these books and I wanted to go and pat them and all that, that it sounds like every book I read I just love and that therefore I have no taste, right? That I'm just like, oh, well, it's a book, I love it. No, I want to make that clear. No. I probably start about 10 books for every book I finish. And I mean, this is a year's worth of weeding and reading in my mind. I mostly dislike every book that I read, and and I don't read them. I don't finish books I don't like, but these are the very few that I loved. Okay, The Wedding People. I love this novel. Again, I had never heard of the author, and I just picked it. I know. I read a review by my favorite reviewer, Ron Charles of the Washington Post. And if you're looking for a good book reviewer, you could subscribe to his Friday column from the Washington Post. The main character in this book is a woman named Phoebe Stone, and she's having quite a hard time of it. Her husband has left her to live with her former best friend. Her cat, her aged cat, died, and Phoebe doesn't see much reason to go on living. And so what she decides to do is leave her job as an adjunct at the university in the city where she's living. And she decides to do what she's always wanted to do, which is go to a famous hotel, the Breakers, in Newport, Rhode Island. And there she has decided that she's going to kill herself. So she gets to the Breakers, and she is going up in the elevator, and she notices when she checks in that everybody, first of all, it's not that crowded, but second of all, everybody seems to, be like everybody else. And it turns out that that weekend, that hotel is the scene of a wedding, and only guests of the bride, the wedding guests, are to be at the hotel. And somehow she was allowed, through some mistake, she was there. So everybody assumes that she's one of the wedding guests. And she rides up in the elevator when she first gets there with the bride, and almost immediately gets entangled in everything that's happening there. It's wonderful. It's so good. And actually, it's funny and it's insightful, and the writing is splendid. And it's a book. I have to say, I have not talked to anybody who has not enjoyed this book. Of course, that's the first thing I say to somebody. Have you read The Wedding People? Did you like it? If they say no, I turn away and don't talk to them. The last book on the list isn't here. It's a book that has just been reprinted, and I think it's on its way. And it's called What Looks Like Crazy on an Ordinary Day. It's by Pearl Cleage. I believe that's how you pronounce it. She's a black writer. This first came out, I think, in 1997, which is when I read it, and I loved it, of course. And I'm so happy to find it back in print. And it's the story, again, of a woman who goes back to, who is diagnosed with HIV, and goes back to her hometown to kind of figure out the past and what she's going to do in the present, and hopefully what she's going to do in the future. So plus it has a great title, What Looks Like Crazy on an Ordinary Day. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you buy a lot of books because it benefits literacy and the bookstore. Yes? What did we miss? Oh, Sorrow and Bliss. Well, it's the same plot as all the other ones. I loved Sorrow and Bliss. Do not neglect looking at it. It's the story of a woman. The title is perfect. It's the same. It's set in England. It's a wonderful audio book. The novel itself is filled with both sorrow and bliss, and it has what I think is missing in so many books. It has a bit of quirkiness, and quirkiness is what I'm always looking for. Here's a little quote from it. The main character's name is Martha, and she is in the midst of a divorce, and one of the characters says to her, "Nostos, Martha, returning home. Algos, pain. Nostalgia is the suffering caused by our unappeased yearning to return." And I think I was caught by that title because I feel like in these days I'm like 99% made up of nostalgia. And somebody said, "What's the other 1%?" I said, terror. So thank you so much.